Are we recording? Yes, perfect. So hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us at this DisABILITYsa 360 discussion. I want to introduce Melanie to welcome everybody into the space. Melanie Cawthon, Director of DisABILITYsa.
Thank you so much, Elaine. So again, thank you for joining us. I'm Melanie Cawthon with DisABILITYsa, and we are hosting our first virtual Conversation 360 on the digital divide and disability. Our Conversation 360s are a series of community forum conversations that bring together both people with and without disabilities to talk about the issues that impact people with disabilities in our community and how we can all take a part and a role in resolving those issues for San Antonio. We're super excited to be partnering with Senior Planet and OATS this evening to bring you this discussion, and appreciate their hosting on their Zoom platform, as we haven't quite come around the digital divide to get that into our tool house. So on that note, I will send it back to you, Elaine.
Thanks. Thank you, Melanie, for that. I am going to be sharing a survey link in our chat, and also when we post this up on Facebook, you'll be able to find that survey link below in the comments. We do encourage you to take that and to share some of your experience and demographics with DisABILITYsa. Informed. And at this point, I would like to welcome our panelists to introduce themselves. We have a few folks with us today representing a number of organizations in San Antonio area. And so I see we have DeAnne Cuellar, if you'd be so kind as to introduce yourself, especially since she's part of us at Senior Planet and we're providing the tech support. And she's also here to share her experience and professional insights.
Good evening. My name is DeAnne Cuellar. I'm the Texas State Director for Older Adults Technology Services and Senior Planet San Antonio. Thanks, Elaine.
Thank you. And then I see Brian Dillard, if you'd be so kind as to unmute and introduce yourself.
There we go. Okay. Yes, I'm Brian Dillard. I'm the Chief Innovation Officer for the City of San Antonio. We're focusing in on digital inclusion as one of our big projects coming into COVID. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. We definitely appreciate the participation of your office. And then I also see we have Karen Lopez. So let me unmute you.
Hi, I'm Karen Lopez Rollerad. I'm the Executive Director for the Bexar County Military and Veterans Service Center. So we primarily provide veterans benefits. We also work with all veterans from all wars, but for our veterans, anywhere from Korea to probably Desert Storm, we're trying to find unique ways in order to support them, because a lot of them don't have the opportunity technology. So we're always trying to reach out to make sure that we can bridge that divide and reach out to our veterans.
Thank you for being here, Karen. And then I also see we have Ryan Flipson on the line. I just wanted to ask for you to introduce yourself too, sir.
Sorry about that. I was answering the door real quick. My name is Ryan Flipson. I'm a clinical social worker by training and a person with a disability here in San Antonio.
Okay,
and
you're
found out about tonight by Melanie.
Thank you. So joining us as a participant. Excellent. I'm just going to go left to right because we have a small group here, and unmute Ashley Longoria next. Go ahead and share and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Ashley Longoria. I'm a care coordinator supervisor with Connectability here in San Antonio. We serve clients who have sustained life-altering injuries. Those include brain injuries, spinal cord injuries, amputation, and stroke, conditions that present with a lifelong journey for clients and their families. And again, trying to plug in resources for them. We've noticed, especially during this time where everybody is isolated, offices are closed, our clients are having a really hard time, downloading forms, if they don't have internet access. We're just really seeing new needs pop up. And we saw this opportunity and again, want to be a part of it and see what else is out there for our clients. And Ryan and I actually work together too. So it's kind of nice to have him on here. Surprised. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Ashley, for being on. Definitely glad to have you join us on DisABILITYsa. It's great.
Thank you.
Okay, so I wanted to get started with some of our questions. We have Karen, Brian, and DeAnne here. Let's start with Karen, because I'm just going to go left to right with what I'm looking at here in terms of my video feed. And the first question I have to you is if you can give a technical definition of what the digital divide is. Let me make sure you're unmuted. Here you go.
So in my line of work, the digital divide is really trying to reach veterans that don't have the technology to be able to file whatever their claims or their benefits. These are individuals that have to resort back to paper copy, right, to the original forms that we have. So those individuals do not have the access nor the accessibility to be able to use technology. So, and we try to overcome this either by doing face-to-face with them or we try to bring them in. One of the other things we're trying to do is trying to get them linked up with, if there are classes where they can learn some basic computer skills. But it really depends on the age of the veteran and their ability and willingness to learn. So our ability to overcome that digital divide usually comes into great customer service when the veteran comes knocking on our door saying, please, can you help me fill this form out? Because as we all know, sometimes we read forms just like doing our taxes. They're very difficult to understand and they can be foreign to somebody that, you know, may not be familiar with them. So my office does a lot of work just sitting down with them and walking through the forms and even filling them out for them if they need to, so that they have a full understanding of what they're trying to attain, whether it be a benefit or a pension, or whether it be something like aid and attendance, especially for older veterans. If your spouse dies, they may be entitled to get someone to come into the house to be a caregiver, or they may have the opportunity to have somebody come and help them. So we're always trying to reach out to them and say, look, you're entitled to this, and we want to make sure that you get it. And if it's just a form that's keeping you from getting the help that you need, come into my office and we'll make sure that we can help you. So for me, that's what overcoming the digital divide is, as far as working in my career.
Thank you for that. And then I'm going to field the same question to Brian. In your experience, what is the technical definition?
Yeah, so one of those is definitely related to what Karen just mentioned, but we look at it from a 3 legs of the stool type approach. And those 3 legs include one is broadband connectivity. So understanding that somebody may have a device, they may have a data plan, but those things run out. So how do we long-term connect residents to the internet in the grand scheme of things? So that's one leg of the stool. The second leg of the stool is really focusing in on access to devices. So understanding I can provide somebody free internet at times, but if they don't have a device to utilize that, then we're back to square one. Or if I have a student that's trying to do their homework from a smartphone rather than a laptop, then they're not really equipped at adequate level. And then the third leg of the stool really focuses in on what Karen had mentioned, which is that digital literacy, digital competency side. So not just how do I bring folks up to speed with their skill sets of being able to access the internet and understanding what and how to use it, but then also being there and setting up that kind of support structure to assist folks when they can't develop that skill set themselves, making sure that they are still able to fully utilize the offerings of the digital realm and everything that's going that direction. So those are 3 legs of the digital inclusion stool for the city of San Antonio, and that's the way we really focus on our work.
Thank you, Brian. And then we've got DeAnne. I'd love to hear from you. What is the technical definition in your field of digital divide?
It's definitely what Brian was talking about with the three legs of the stool with, affordable high-speed internet access, the access to a device that can, use the high-speed internet broadband, and also the digital literacy. I think that it's evolving to, tech equity. So that's a new framework. It's making sure that not only once someone is connected on the other side of the divide, that their data is being used safely and that they are able to be on the internet privately, and that there's overall just no malice in using the internet. And also just making sure that the most vulnerable communities in our city have access to all three legs of the stool.
Thank you. Is there anyone I'm missing, Melanie? Anyone else?
Is Jessica Looney on? I didn't see her, so I think that would, Karen, Brian, DeAnne, Carrie's not here, and Jessica is not here. So we're set.
Okay, then I will move right into my second question, and I'll head back to Karen with this. How has the digital divide impacted the way your organization connects to those with disabilities? And a few prompts for that is, for example, what might be happening in your area that would address the digital divide for inclusion of those with disabilities. So I have some follow-up questions too, but if you could just give me the background of how has the digital divide generally impacted the way your organization connects to those with disabilities. And let me make sure that you're unmuted. There you go.
So for us, since we deal with the population, there's a large portion of the population that comes with disabilities. So whatever those disabilities may be, it can be anything from something very minute, depends on what their rating is from the VA, to something quite severe. So I think we deal on a day-to-day basis with the veteran as that veteran is, whatever their disability is. If somebody is rated at 100%, does it mean that somebody else who's rated at 100% might have lost something more significant? So it really comes down to how significant, the injury is. So we go with that to determine how we approach those veterans. So we try to meet them based on their disability and try to overcome those disabilities. So if the individual can't walk, or if they can't see, if they can't, if they cannot communicate effectively, if they cannot speak, we make sure that when they come into our service center that we have the capability of being able to work with them. Whether we provide them somebody that can actually guide them, or whether we provide somebody that can act as a caregiver for them at the time of need, that is something that we do to help overcome that gap. So digitally for us right now, especially during the COVID time, it is using as many tools as we possibly can, whether it be Zoom, whether it be telephonically, whether it be just trying to use technology in order for us to meet their needs. So veterans with disabilities, it comes in, like I said, in many different forms. So our ultimate goal is really trying to reach out to them to find out what exactly they need, and then using what we can possibly use to be able to meet those needs. So for us, it is, there is no one single type of veteran with a disability. So it comes, as it walks the door. So we try to handle that situation and deal with that, the best and provide the best service that we can for each one of these veterans.
Thank you. Following up on that, where can we benefit from stark improvements in your sector?
I think one of the greatest things that we've been able to do is really trying to deal with a lot of legislation, right, and trying to streamline some of the processes. In the past, one of the things that have always plagued veterans has been benefits, and the fact that veteran benefits have taken years sometimes to get back to the veteran. Also, a lot of veterans don't really know what their benefits are. So making sure that we are posting, you know, what the information is, reaching out to the veteran using access means, whether we're posting it on our website, using social media, trying to reach out to the veterans so they have a better understanding of what they're entitled to is something that we have tried to, you know, really promote. I think the other thing is working with the VA as well as the Texas Veteran Commission and trying to help the veteran identify areas that we can streamline and be more efficient. One of the greatest things is that we reduce the number of days that people have for their claims. When it used to be somewhere over 365, so over a year, now can be reduced somewhere to 45 to 90 days where people are actually getting their claims back. And that's extremely beneficial for somebody who puts in a claim for a disability. They're waiting for that money to come back to them, or what they put in a claim for pension as well. They're waiting for that money to come back to them. It's needed money, they're entitled to it. And the process has been significantly streamlined. The other thing that I would also mention is that the VA is really they're trying to overcome the digital divide. I would say within the last year, they're becoming a lot more digital, and the fact that we used to have to fax everything. And this was what, 2020, we're still faxing pieces of paper to the VA. They're trying to determine, or they're trying to come up with systems where we can actually send directly to the VA so that they can receive these claims, they can process them more quickly, and then they can get the individual as quickly as they possibly can if they're entitled to that. So there's a lot going on within Bexar County as within, you know, our relationship with the VA, and just trying to get the veteran the benefits that they're entitled to. So I think everybody is looking really at how they can find the right way to use technology to make the process more efficient.
Thank you.
We're not quite there yet. I'm going to tell you, we still fax.
Well, somebody has to, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Keep those old ways alive, you know? We don't want to lose who we were. But I did want to welcome everybody too to ask questions in the chat. So if you have any questions of our panelists, of Karen, Brian, and DeAnne, please ask them in the chat, and we'll be sure to voice them throughout the session. So next, I'd love to talk with Brian and ask the same question. How has the digital divide impacted the way your organization connects to those with disabilities?
Yeah, so if I'm being very candid, it's honestly the awareness that, you know, we haven't done enough. But I mean, that's everything now post-COVID. COVID really, you know, shook up everybody's comfort level. So from my team within innovation and specifically within digital inclusion, you know, it's become a grander conversation for us. You know, Debbie Shraven over in our disability access office, you know, she really kind of drives the force on that. And we hadn't had a lot of communication with her in the past, and that is changing as we move forward. So when we talk about digital inclusion, I know we speak on broadband connectivity and devices and literacy, but there's also kind of a level of access to services for us from the city side. More folks are having access to those services from a distance now. And that obviously does not exclude our communities with disabilities. We have to be very cognizant of how we're opening up those opportunities and also how we're making it easier. So currently underneath our CivTech SA program, which is a joint partnership between City of San Antonio and Geekdom, you know, we actually have a team going through there that's trying to create like a One City app. So they're trying to streamline our services into something that's a lot easier for residents in general, but also, you know, with every additional step that a resident has to take, that adds a level of complexity that's already within a very complex system. So if you want to go find out what's going on with your SAWS bill or your CPS bill or something with your permit within the city, if you want to have a yard sale, you want to get that permit, we're trying to identify how we can have all that scoped into one approach and then continuously grow in that. So I think the awareness of you know, the needs of the community specifically our communities with disabilities, that's something that we have to constantly take into the conversation, and that's something we're taking into this conversation. Not to mention with digital inclusion overall, I mean, a lot of our communities were already having to deal with, working from home. So I think after COVID, it changes the entire culture of workforce development, workforce opportunities. It honestly opens up some employment opportunities that weren't there before because employers just didn't believe in the remote work offering. So I think that adds on to it, but we have to have those folks connected in order for them to take advantage of that. So I'm excited about the work we're doing, and I'm excited to now be way more aware of what we need to be doing as we move forward.
Thank you, Brian. And to follow up there, where can we benefit from stark improvements in your sector? What should we be pushing for to see?
I'm not getting any audio.
Brian, are you still with us?
There we go. It didn't let me unmute for some reason. We're good to go now. Can you repeat the question one more time? I'm sorry.
So following up, you explained some of the ways that there needs to be improvements and some opportunities. What would you identify as places where we can benefit from stark improvements in your sector?
Mm-hmm. Well, in our sector, not just in digital inclusion, but innovation overall, our kind of focus is on, identifying emerging approaches that can be technology, or it can just be a different way that we do things within city government. But I think that's really where you'll see the most stark improvements is instead of just doing the same thing because that's just how we do it, making sure that we're innovative. I mean, we have 4 core values within the city of San Antonio. One of them is innovation, to be innovative in all our approaches. So I think the biggest improvement is services to our residents, allowing them to be more efficient and more effective and impactful to what we offer. Yeah, I think it's just a change of mindset and a change of overall culture rather than just sticking around and saying, well, that's just the way city operates. It's not acceptable anymore. So.
Thanks. And that's actually, we have a follow-up question from the chat here for you. And this person's wondering, how is your office including people with disabilities at the planning tables for what the city is doing in this area?
Mm-hmm. So we do have a digital inclusion task force that we pieced together. We try to be very inclusive. We've got about 40 or 50 agencies involved there. And I think that's one of the conversations that we have is, how do we continue? Because every time I say we have a task force that has 40 or 50 agencies, everybody's like, I'm not going to that meeting. How do we maintain that inclusiveness of folks that are being serviced by what we're doing, while also being productive with that? That's a tough one to move forward on, but that's also why we have folks hired on within the city of San Antonio. So like I mentioned, Debbie Shraven from our Disability Access Office, she helps us tremendously in guiding us, and she checks us when we need to be checked. She says, why aren't you thinking about that? Why aren't you including these people into the conversation? DeAnne is actually one of our, not only the leaders on the digital inclusion task force, but she's part of our governance model. She's one of the members of our Innovation Technology Council Committee. So, we look to folks like DeAnne, we look to people like Debbie that are in the conversation to let us know, 1, where we're messing up and where we need to do better. And then 2, who else needs to be at the table that's not there. So I think that I don't want to beat around the bush on the answer, but that's really what it is. So I can't say we have all voices at the table that need to be there, but there's definitely a growing effort to continue going in that path.
Thank you, and thank you for being a part of this. Let me now go to DeAnne and ask the same question. How has the digital divide impacted the way your organization connects to those with disabilities?
Well, at OATS and Senior Planet San Antonio, representation matters for us. So we, try to hire people with disabilities to be a part of the Senior Planet team, to be technology trainers, to be community outreach coordinators. We also, advocate for those people to serve on commissions and boards. So there are various members of the Senior Planet San Antonio team that are, when they're not training, they're also, parts of commissions and boards, community advisory groups. We also have worked a lot this year to make sure that our resources are accessible. So seniorplanet.org and OATS.org are now accessible websites, and it's a work in progress. We're still working on it, but we are working closely with web developers to make sure what we put on the internet is accessible to people living with disabilities. We also believe that partnership matters. That's why we're having this event tonight. Working with people like Melanie and the rest of the people on this call is also very important to us, because community partnership also matters. And the two last things I would point out is we at OATS and Senior Planet San Antonio are open to learning, realizing when we're wrong, and learning how that we could do a better job. We're very open to that process. And then the last thing is making sure, as representatives of this organization working with older adults and people with disabilities, is making sure that policy and funding priorities as it relates to people that are living with disabilities remains at the center of the conversations that we're having out in the community with everybody.
Thank you. And where can we benefit from stark improvements in your sector, DeAnne?
I think that the intersection of living with a disability, whether you're an older adult or not, and digital divide is a it's a big issue. We're definitely chipping away at an iceberg with an ice pick. So I would pick back to what Brian says. We know that there's more work to do. We know that there's that we could do better, and we need to keep doing better and do more until that changes.
Thank you. Okay, so coming back to Karen for our next question. I'd love to hear a little bit, and I'm going to set this up because it's a little bit of a lengthier question. I'm going to start with Karen, but I was hoping that before that Melanie, the Director of DisABILITYsa, could actually give us a little bit of a definition between what is access and what is accessibility.
That is a really good question. I have the answer in my head. Let's see if I can get it out in words. So you may be able to have the tool. You may be able to get to a facility or have internet access at home. But if the tool and the access to the internet has a barrier for your ability to work with the tool or the internet situation because you have a disability, then they're not accessible. So you may have internet access, you may have an iPad, but if the website isn't reader friendly, then you don't have accessibility. You may have a gaming controller and you may have internet access and you may have the game, but if the controller is not adaptable for a physical disability, then you don't have accessibility. So it's just one more barrier to inclusion and one more part of the digital divide.
Thank you, Melanie. And with that, I'm going to turn to Karen. The question is, 1 in every 4 residents don't have digital access. 1 in every 7 residents live with a disability. We've focused studies on those who are students, those who are older adults, economic barriers, but it seems like there's an even greater disparity when we are not only looking at access, but accessibility. How is your organization working to address accessibility on top of the access issue? And this is for Karen.
So for us, we work directly with the VA, and that's really trying to determine what modifications need to be made. for that veteran, depending upon their disability, in order to have them in any capacity be able to live a full life, right? So it is where it comes to modifying the house, whether they need to do a whole home modification so that person can live in that house based upon their disability. Something as simple as maybe lowering the counters, or making a bathtub more accessible. So we try to work with the VA and the different programs the VA has to find out what exactly the needs of that veteran is. And as well as, and I think DeAnne said it best, we have this network, we have a community partnership. There are a lot of community partners that we also work with, depending upon what the disability is, what the veteran needs, or even the spouse of the veteran. So whether that individual needs something in particular for them to be able to be functional, to drive a car, does a car need to be modified? Then we try to locate individuals, and there's always veteran-owned or veteran-friendly organizations that we reach out to within San Antonio. And that's probably one of the greatest things about being in Military City, USA, right? Is that in my area that we deal with, it's really finding compassionate people to reach out to and ask, can you help? And I will tell you that we're quite successful in finding that. We need this type of modification. And getting to Brian, you talk about innovation. There's a lot of innovative people out there that'd be more than willing to try to figure something out in order to help a service member or former service member, that is in need. So even something as basic as, can you build so that I can get to my house? We do that as well. So trying to figure out what exactly is needed so that they can perform the task is something that we do, and then finding the right partner to help us achieve that. And we have been quite successful in the past in being able to help the veterans.
Great. That's an awesome process of actually taking it to the micro level and then figuring out how the macro community can really meet the needs of our individuals. I'm going to turn to Brian now and ask the same question about access and accessibility in your sector, and how is your organization or department working to address accessibility on top of the access issue?
I'm gonna pretty much parrot the Colonel there. She hit it right on the head. So I think the main overarching thing is we're not the experts. The city of San Antonio cannot be the experts, and we should never accept that we're the experts. So we can't operate in a silo. I think when it comes to the collective and collaborative partnerships that you move forward on, you really depend on the expertise outside of your own little bubble. We look to those partners, those agencies and organizations that have those client relationships, that know what their clients' needs are. Oftentimes, those are the biggest ones. So this big project that we're doing right now is on broadband connectivity. But we also have a field of, devices. I'm not the person to try to prescribe what different communities need, what specific devices, and how those devices need to be configured for each community. I'm going to look at folks in those communities to make those decisions with me. Same with the literacy component. Our public library has done an amazing job in the training aspect of getting folks online and them understanding how to access the internet and what to do with it. We look at our client partnerships across the board and look to that support. School districts have a lot of experience with this, with communities throughout, not just our communities with disabilities. So we really look to them. Now, there are some things internally. So I'll give you an example. Our COVID dashboards on the City of San Antonio website, our team worked with ITSD and Metro Health, obviously, to spin those up. But there's constant questions of, accessibility. Cool, we gave you access to all this data and all this information, but I think this access versus accessibility is something that we have to continuously just pound in our heads as we do this stuff. We have to keep thinking of the personas that we're servicing with these new features and amenities that we think are so cool, but may not be accessible. I'm going to say Debbie's name like 18 times during this panel. But again, that's why we hire folks like that in-house, but we also look externally to get that direction. Yeah, I think it's just understanding that you can't know it all and you shouldn't. And if you try to say that you do, then you're a disservice to the folks that you're supposed to be serving. So
Thank you, Brian. It sounds like one way that we need to move forward and improving it is that process of communication, making sure that we're getting those voices heard and understanding what they're saying to us, and that they're part of the beta process, right? They're part of figuring out what works.
there's a term I use a lot nowadays. It's called agency. Providing residents agency, providing these communities agency and ownership, and empowering them to make those decisions instead of us, somebody with a title making the decisions on their behalf.
Thanks. And now DeAnne, same question. Looking at access and accessibility, how is your organization working to address accessibility on top of the access issue?
Well, at OATS and Senior Planet, we are also trying to partner with the community partners here in San Antonio who are also working on transportation, workforce development, shelter, and food scarcity. And also we are not creeping too far away from our mission at any time, saying that our goal is to end social isolation and ageism. So for us, it's not about connecting older adults or people with disabilities so much to the device and the literacy and the high-speed internet access. Is because we really do want to use those tools to end ageism and end social isolation.
Thank you. All right, so next question is, in your experience, in your respective areas, what barriers to education, healthcare, transportation, employment, and socialization have you seen people with disabilities experience due to the digital divide? And I'm going to switch this up because we're about halfway through our questions, and I'm actually going to start with DeAnne and have her answer that question in terms of all those barriers that we see. How do you see that amplified regarding the digital divide?
This is a hard one for me. I think the biggest personal challenge for me is that it's 2020 and there's still a lack of public awareness and a lot of misinformation about what someone with a disability looks like. And even saying that is hard for me because there are people who don't see people. I'm trying to be as inclusive as possible. It's like we haven't even gotten to the point of using the language that's the most inclusive. And I think we need to really work hard on diversity and inclusion and accessibility and really start to help identify the different personas of people with disability. There are people living with disabilities that you can make assumptions based on what you see and what you hear, and then there are people that are living with disabilities and you don't see and you don't hear what their disability is. And so what I'm trying to say difficultly is that there's still this black and white story of what the person with the disability is. And so I think the challenge with that in San Antonio, with a city that's so diverse, with the military city USA, like Karen said, people that are veterans, people like Michael working for Lighthouse of the Blind, people like Melanie, and all of the other people in the community. Like, I think our biggest challenge is, making sure that people know more people with a disability going forward, because the more people you know with a disability, just knowing them and having them on your commissions and boards, then you can have better informed policies and funding priorities. So if you don't know somebody with a disability, you should reach out to an organization like Melanie, if not volunteer your time, but also just see if there's a community organization that could really benefit from your time, talent, and treasure in this space.
Thanks. And I would say also, again, back to language, changing your language and your own perspective as an individual so that people are willing to have conversations with you and building a trusting relationship. Because like we've mentioned throughout this, you don't know always when you're looking at a disability or how a disability actually manifests in a person's life. But if someone knows from your language and how you present yourself that that's a conversation they can have with you and you're interested in having it, then it starts to change us.
Right. And I mean, I think one thing that I would just add, now I'm thinking out loud, is, you know, you might know somebody who you met who was not living with a disability, and now because they're older, or because of some life-changing event, now they are someone living with a disability. So, you know, it could be something as simple as reaching out to someone that you already know whose life has changed. And as it relates to us and OATS and Senior Planet, the number is really high. It's something like 72 to 80% of people over 60 are living with some sort of disability. So you might already know them, and you just haven't sat down and have that conversation with them.
And Elaine, I have to jump in here and just give a big old hearty amen. That's all I have to say about that.
Thanks. And I see we've got some great questions that have been coming up in the chat too. There was one earlier from Michael Guajardo of Lighthouse for the Blind. He had a question regarding veterans and their spouses. He sees instances where the spouse has also aged and developed physical challenges and needs access to resources, technology, and services. The veterans, fortunately, have access to agencies such as the VA, but perhaps after the veteran has passed away and the spouse is facing challenges and they are left unaware of the available resources. So this question goes to Karen, I believe. What sort of services are available for that population? And is there already some sort of outreach taking place?
So that is an absolutely great question. So dealing with spouses is something that we do quite often. One of the things that our center does is we tell everybody that that the military took care of them at the beginning of their life, right, when they were young. The day that you retire, the military thanks you for your service, and then that's about it, you know, and then it's over. So, and for a lot of veterans, it's pretty daunting. It's like, what just happened? You know, I had a security net and now I have no safety net.
I think we all have you a little frozen.
We always say, when the military says, thank you for your service. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Oh, you just froze
for
for a second, but now you're good.
Everything for the veteran all the way to their last salute. And so their last salute, and we deal a lot with spouses, because back in the day, the veteran didn't have to involve their spouse in things like survivor benefits or any type of benefits. Today is totally changed. Your spouse has to be standing right next to you when you deny and you say, I don't want survivor benefits. Back in the day, nope, the veteran's like, nope, I'm not going to pay for this insurance. It's too much. You're not taking it out of my retirement. And never told their spouse. And so when the veteran passed, the spouse was like, what happened? I have nothing. And so today that is not the case. But we deal with older vets and their spouses, and they're at a loss. They come to our door. They don't even know what paperwork, you know, they need to bury their spouse. So we try to go out to senior centers. I hate to tell you, I spent a lot of time in the cemetery. That's where I meet a lot of spouses. So Fort Sam Houston is where I meet a lot of spouses. And we bring them in, you know, we opened our doors, we go out to the senior centers. A lot of spouses like to go out there. It's a great place to mingle. We were pre-COVID, we were doing a circuit. I was on a circuit. I was working with the city. I was working with all the council members. I came out of the city, so I was working with all the council members, trying to reach all their senior centers. And so unfortunately now we're in COVID, didn't have the opportunity to be able to do that. But once this goes away, I intend to go back, because I think that you're right. The spouses do have a right to know what their benefits are. So right now what we're doing is posting on social media. We're making sure that I'm putting a newsletter together, and we're sending out to our clients, you know, hey, this is what the VA has readily available to you. This is what we can do for you. And just some, you know, little Quizlets. This is in little tidbits. This is what's available to you. These are benefits. And did you know? You know, a lot of people don't know what they're entitled to when it comes to burial. And it's surprising. It's surprising that, you know, bury their loved one that they're like, we have no idea. Do I pay for the casket? Do I not pay for the casket? What do I get? What do I not get? And unfortunately, it's because no one's really sat to explain this to them. So when you leave the military, you're supposed to get a briefing. And unfortunately, from the day that you leave the military to the day maybe you pass has been a long time. So sometimes you just need a refresher, and we're there to give you a refresher. My guys are all over the city running around, you know, help and educate. And it really does come down to a level of education. So that's a great question. So we deal with spouses. We love spouses, and with them every day.
Thank you. And to follow up on the question that Brian and DeAnne have answered, in your experience, well, I don't think we've gotten to Brian quite yet. In your experience in your respective areas, what barriers to education, healthcare, transportation, employment, and socialization have you seen people with disabilities experience due to the digital divide?
I think, you know, I would go back to what, you know, that it is really, first of all, it is very difficult, like you said, to determine what is somebody with a disability, you know what I mean? And determine, especially from my perspective, when we're talking about the VA and how we define disabilities, right? When we're talking about people with how the VA rates people and the ratings that they get, and then what level is your disability? It's a totally different, I think, world. So it's trying to determine what exactly that they need and trying to determine how best we can help them. So from our perspective, it is based upon that rating, right? That we are using the best services that we possibly can to try to get them to overcome. But one thing that I want to say about the VA, although we are trying to be as progressive, the VA is trying to be as progressive. They're putting a lot of effort into education. They're putting a lot of effort into overcoming people's accessibility as well as accessibility for veterans. They're putting a lot of effort in trying to make the veterans who had returned after 9/11, who, you know what I mean, may not have come home whole, are putting a lot of effort in trying to provide them alternative. If it's education, how can I best educate them? What is the best way to educate them? How can I put them in another career field? Which way, you know, how do I get them educated? So maybe they were learning, they knew how to do this in the military, but now I'm going to teach them something else. So it is always an effort to find the right fix for the military and for those individuals vested in. I would think that that is something that we've done quite well. That's something that we do not let go quickly, is any of the veterans. The investment will automatically go back into that veteran. So within all the programs that the VA has, whether it's even just buying something as simple as an iPad, you know, so the veteran can speak, which we see quite often coming into our office, because we have veterans that have lost their voice. And we have digitized voices or just iPads. It's I think something as small as that has really helped kind of overcome that digital divide and overcome their disability, right? They feel like, hey, now I can communicate with you. And so
Thank you. And I'm going to turn to Brian and ask the same question. And I'll repeat it. It's in your experience in your respective areas, what barriers to education, healthcare, transportation, employment, and socialization have you seen people with disabilities experience due to the digital divide?
Everything, all the above. No. Honestly, it's a barrier for, you know, just residents across the board. So it just multiplies for residents with disabilities. And that's for everything. You know, we look at, so I'll give you one example. We talk about economic barriers. We look at the fact that if you want to operate in the digital economy, you have to have a financial institution, right? a lot of times our residents don't have access to financial institutions for one reason or another. That multiplies when we talk about, you know, individuals with learning disabilities. So we really have to have that support structure in place, you know, ×2 when it comes to making sure that we're helping those folks access those things. We talk about, you know, workforce development. I'm interested to see what, you know, this new world looks like for our individuals with disabilities. You know, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of employers weren't with it when it came to remote work. You're either in the office or you're not. And so I think that's become a lot more lenient, and that's allowing a lot more folks to access the workforce sector a little bit easier nowadays. But again, that also requires us to make sure that those skills are being trained across the board as well. So I think you could point at any of these and say that the digital divide impacts it. I mean, especially as all of these sectors, whether it's transportation or healthcare, a lot of them are growing into this digital realm. You know, a lot of these services are being offered digitally, and honestly, some of them are becoming more exclusively online or exclusively accessed through a mobile phone or through the internet. So the more that occurs, the more we're going to see those divisions. But that's our job as innovators and kind of leaders in our roles, to project for those changes that come with all the cool stuff. There's always somebody that's impacted in an adverse way. So we have to definitely project for those. It's our job.
Thank you, Brian. And actually, at this point, I wanted to open this up to a couple of our exhibitors to join in the discussion. We have Michael Guajardo from the Lighthouse for the Blind, as well as Jackie Rivera from Humana's Bold Goal. If you wanted to add in some of your insights into that last question.
So this is Jackie. I'll jump in and say that I love this conversation, and it aligns so much with kind of everything that I think so many partners are working on, and that's, you know, these barriers, including digital inclusion. It's, you know, it's social determinant of health. That's something that's preventing people from reaching their best versions of themselves. And when you think about Humana being a healthcare company, unless we're willing to help our community partners figure this out, like, we're not going to get anywhere. You know, it doesn't matter, you know, if a member is going to the doctor, or, you know, if we prescribe them medicine, or if we're addressing all of their clinical needs, like the life needs that people face, whether it's, you know, a senior or a person with a disability. I mean, until you get those basic needs met, we're just running in circles. So I'm connecting so much to what the panelists are saying. I think it's such a big conversation, and thinking about innovatively how we can approach it together. It's just a good conversation.
I would like to offer a couple of comments on some of this. I think the real challenge when you're talking in terms of the technology is that the technology is advancing so quickly, and there's so much change that happens in such a short period of time that it's hard to keep up with a lot of it. And it's certainly something I experienced myself as I went through high school and college, dealing with my own disability, and seeing how the technology would just leave us behind. And fortunately, in recent years, we've seen many advances with a lot of this technology, but even then, it's still not enough. And I see it as a particular problem for those people who have not had access to technology, and so are unfamiliar with it. And just as an example, this is something that I've been keeping an eye on of late, and it's this whole trend that we see with smartphones and apps and services like Uber and Lyft and shopping services. And the technology itself is fantastic. It's great. I mean, I use it myself, and it's opened up a lot of opportunities for me. It's made life easier. My quality of life has improved. But I'm very tech savvy, so, and I kept up with all of these things. And I see that there's a large population of people, and this also applies to those who are elderly, I immediately think of like my parents. You know, they are older and they don't necessarily use things like apps all the time, but they could certainly benefit from a lot of these services. And so one part of that digital divide that I see in terms of us as a community is you have a lot of businesses who are utilizing these technologies, and a lot of people are benefiting from them, but there's a population of people within the community that's not able to avail themselves of that technology. A very specific example would be something like, you know, you have our grocery stores, H-E-B and Walmart, and they all offer corner pickups. You can call in, order your groceries, don't have to go into the store, they can just pick it up. But there's a technology component to that. One is the accessibility of the app, the accessibility of the website, and if you are able to manage that, how do you pick up those groceries? Well, you go into the grocery store, you go into a parking spot. There's a sign there where you have to punch in or text a number. You know, how many people who have not used those sort of technologies or don't have access to it are able to, again, avail themselves of that. So that's a constant problem. It's just this evolution of technology and trying to keep up with it and still provide those technologies to individuals who could really benefit from it.
Thank you, Michael. That is an excellent bridge to carry us forward into the next question, which is to the group. The COVID pandemic has brought a spotlight on the potential of digital resources to bring communities together and create greater accessibility to forums, as well as showing us the inaccessibility of the digital platform. So at this point, I would like to go back to DeAnne to kick it off. In your industry, do you see movement to bridge these gaps?
I do. I mean, I'm saddened that a global disaster and a pandemic was the catalyst for so many people coming together. I do not believe that the work will stop even if we had a vaccine and the pandemic was over. There's more than one thing going on at the same time right now. There's, you know, a call for racial equity. There's a call for health equity. There's a call for things to change. And, you know, it's all unfortunate. Like, I don't have any way to, you know, make it glossy or shiny or make it better than what it is. But if I have to see the silver lining and be hopeful about anything, is that people like Melanie and Michael and Karen and Jackie and Brian and Daryl and all of us who have been advocating on these issues for a long time are now finding new allies in this work. And with there being so much work to be done, the more the merrier, right? Like, there's room for everybody, there's work to be done. And so we were only going to benefit by the more people that get involved with this work. I think the one thing that we need to work on if we want to make it through to the other side and continue to work together is still acknowledge that within this space of health equity or using equity as a framework to solve some of the most complicated problems or needs, is that there still is a lot of discrimination. Veterans are discriminated against, people with disabilities are discriminated against, people of color, women, you know, the list is long. And so I think there's definitely a watershed moment going on. And so I hope, you know, with the lack of resources or the resources being made and people not being to access them, is that we do finally get to a broader conversation about how to end discrimination so that we can all push through together at some point.
Thanks. Yes, I think we're at a point in time where people are interested in having the conversation by and large in a way that it just hasn't been as present in my lifetime. People want to be part of the conversation even if they don't know what to do. So it's excellent to be hearing the insights from folks who have direct experience. Next, I would also like to ask Brian, in terms of your organization, your department, the same question in terms of, you know, we've gotten to see things in starker relief in a sense about who does or doesn't have accessibility in a digital platform and what does that mean? In your industry, do you see movement to bridge those gaps that have they've always been there, but now they've just become much more clear to all the rest of us?
Yeah, it's definitely been a lot of folks moving in the same direction now. You know, the fact that we got such a major investment in a project that's focused in on digital inclusion really exemplifies, you know, where city government is looking at when it comes to this, because it didn't just, it didn't just impact folks that, you know, are most underprivileged. It impacted everybody. It impacted everybody from our most privileged to the wealthy folks. It impacted economies. So then it became a real thing, you know. And it's unfortunate, you know, I agree, it's unfortunate it got to that point, but, you know, out of a crisis, we'll find success. Yeah, so I guess that's, yeah, it's really important now. And I agree with DeAnne, like, you know, it's the synergy that's coming out of this and that kind of teamwork is a beautiful thing. And it's already shown its worth in what we're doing. Not only the city of San Antonio, but, you know, small c, the city as a whole, the whole community. So yeah, that's all I can say is yes.
Thanks. And then I'll turn to Karen next.
So I have to say that I'm going to write down everything DeAnne said, because I totally agree. It's wonderful, outstanding. I want the speech. Sign me up. It was great. But, you know, one thing in my area that I see is that, you know, with the prevalency of us going to more digital means and being able to kind of come together, which is fantastic, I have experienced a left behind generation. There is a generational divide, and I see it on a daily basis. There is a generation, my mother's almost 90, okay? There's a generation out there that still, she will not touch a computer. She will not touch anything of technology. So it is wonderful, you know what I mean, that we have moved forward. It really has opened an avenue for us. It's really opened a world. I'm really trying to get her on some sort of senior iPad or something that would be, you know, accessible to her, easy for her to use, a senior iPhone or something to that effect. Because I think that generation, my mother's probably one of the very last of kind of the, you know, the greatest generation of that World War II generation. But still, that level, we see it every day with the veterans coming in to see us. They are, well, we tell them, you know, you have to use the phone to call us, or can you just, you know, send us your files? No. Do you have access to a computer? No. Do you know how to use a computer? No. So we're not seeing veterans face to face. We're not, because of COVID. However, I will tell you, when I hear we're on the 4th floor, but we're getting knock, 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 knock on the 1st floor, you know, of veterans that are knocking on the door. So what do? We mask up, we put our PPE on, and we go downstairs and we sit down with them, because they're waiting for us, you know. Believe me, they're waiting for us early, because that is their generation, right? They're going to show up early, and we open 8, they're going to be there at 7:30. So waiting for my guys sit out there and writing out forms, you know. So we have advanced, and I think that's wonderful. Everything we just talked about, it is. But I don't want to say that we're 100% perfect, because there is a generation out there that is being left behind, you know, that probably needs a little bit more effort and innovation, in the fact that they just need something a little simpler to use, you know what I mean? That would maybe bring them to feeling more connected. Because and I won't speak on my side of the house, for my mother, right, being in the house and not being able to communicate, not being able to have her routine, and not being able to, as she still drives and goes around and she's very able, it drives her crazy, you know, and just watching the television is not enough. So it's just something that I think about quite a bit, as far as age goes, and age being in a generation of, you know, this concept of digital divide. We have come a long way, and this COVID has really, or this pandemic has really allowed us to come together. But there's still a little bit way to go, and unfortunately, you know, I think there's a little effort, and it could be in the you know, in economically deprived areas. It could be in Title I schools. I do a lot of work in Title I schools. It could be for elderly population that being in a level of isolation is just not a good place to be. So
And
I don't want to be a bummer after DeAnne brought me up, but you know, it's just something I think about on a daily basis.
Sure, and like following up on that, do you think that this push towards inclusion in digital platforms, do you think it's going to go away when the pandemic dissipates, or do you think that's going to have a lasting effect?
I hope that it has a lasting effect. Although I will tell you that there's nothing better than meeting somebody face to face. But if I can't meet you face to face, there's nothing better than having coffee with you. So if Jonathan was here, I'd be, you know, down in the Pearl with him right now. You know, I think having a face to face, there's a lot of synergy that comes out of that. But if we can't do this, this is a wonderful alternative. The one thing that it has done, it has forced also a generation of individuals to understand how to use these types of systems, Zoom, WebEx, all of that, to bring people together and to use them in ways where you could use it for business, or perhaps you can use it for your personal means, right? People are connecting that way. So hopefully it won't go away. And then even if you may be global, as a military and veteran community is often global, it brings people together. So you see our children, my son plays with friends that he had in the military when we were in the military, and they live in Germany. And so he plays with them all the time. So he doesn't lose friends, which I think is a good thing.
So he plays on video games online?
He plays video games. They're usually Zooming or Skyping or doing something to that effect. To them, that's the new normal. That's their play date. You know, we used to go outside and play. No, they don't do that. They get on the Zoom or they get on their video games, and that's play. And I'm like, have you ever seen your friend? Like, do you talk to them? Oh, all the time. But it's all through virtual technology. I don't know. That's just my kid.
And I'll say, just from the students we have who are 60 plus in our Zoom sessions at Senior Planet, I've noticed now that we've been in this coronavirus situation for 4 months or so, it's gone. People are hungry to socially connect. I had a 91-year-old lady who was a student I used to have in class who is all gung-ho about getting on Zoom. You know, doesn't need. They're ready to learn the technology. And so I think that's going to be an ongoing change. And then I wanted to open this up to Michael and Jackie, if you wanted to comment from your experience or your organizations.
Sure. With trying to address that need of people out there who want the technology or need the technology, training is going to be a very important component to addressing those needs. And I feel like there has to be, and with some of these groups, that it has to be tailored. I mean, we have training in place that works for most of the people that we work with. These could be college students or just younger people in general that are able to use this technology, and especially if they have the right training. But I don't think that model would necessarily work for everybody, especially if they're like what was mentioned earlier, that you have individuals who never touched a computer before, never used a smartphone before. They're still using flip phones right now, and asking them to say, okay, we can train you. You know, you have to use a touchscreen device, and you have to download this app, and you have to register, and you have to put in your credit card in there, and that's just not going to be possible for many of these people. They just don't know how, and so the training that has to be offered has to be even more extensive. It has to be more, I would say, basic. They really need those real basic minimal skills just to accomplish the simplest of tasks on a smartphone device or a computer. And these things, for all the talk, that these things are getting simpler to use, I think for some people, it's just more complicated. I kind of ran through a list of things that you need to do just to get to using an app. There's all sorts of steps that have to be done just to do that one task. So I think that is one area that we've looked at there at the Lighthouse, especially now in this COVID situation. Everything has to be done remotely or online with the type of services we're offering. We've seriously had to consider how we can administer some of our services, some of our training, and find a way to present it in a way that's doable for people who are not accustomed to using technology.
Yeah, and for me, I would totally agree with that, and piggybacking off of what everybody said, because I think my mind is in the same space. But you take the healthcare industry for example, and I think what's interesting is you have two audiences, right? You have those who need the services, and then you have those that are providing the services. And I think what's happening, again, the silver lining that we're seeing is that you have the audiences who are more willing to pay attention to those technology services. And you have the service providers, i.e. doctors, physicians, who are making those same concessions. So, previously, telehealth, for example, we had patients who were completely opposed to telehealth, absolutely did not want to do it. And you had doctors who felt the same way, who just didn't want to do it. It was a waste of time. But now, you see the numbers around telehealth, and you have members who are using it and utilizing it, and you have doctors who went from maybe doing about 5% of their visits virtually to now like 90% of their visits virtually. Like you're seeing both audiences kind of rise to the occasion, and I don't think that's going away. I think now people are seeing that there could be a simplified approach to that. And so it's, Michael, to your point, really digging in and making sure that we're coming up with those simplified solutions. And it can be long-term. It doesn't have to be just during the pandemic. It could be, post-pandemic. So it's definitely promising.
Thanks. Yeah, we're in a period of great experiment where we're all forced to get out of our comfort zone. I know comfortable doing this, moderating video recording, but you know what? When you have to do it, it's the thing you do. So there's something for all the other people who are making leaps much greater than that.
Hey, Elaine, this is Daryl, and I think there's something to say about working collaboratively with partners and making sure that we're working together to address these gaps, identifying them. And I think from our start, which was a great investment through the Humana Foundation for what we're doing with older adult technology services, it was like a proven methodical methodology, which was there to focus on just one specific demographic, one population. And the trainers in our classes, they can attest to where it's more than just learning buttons and learning how, concepts of apps, but it's an emotional journey. And you're dealing with folks that are maybe broken on the inside, insecure, they never finished school. Not to mention there's that fear component of hacking, loss of control, loss of material. And that's where it's pairing that purposeful methodology with a compassionate or a servant leader, like in the classroom, to help those people go. We're just happy, not if we complete the book, but let's just say that folks are able to have that quality discussion about Internet of Things. I think that's realistic, but it's very doable. But it's that collaborative connecting, like with the Humana Foundation and, all of us here on that call to try and help bridge this mammoth gap right now.
Thanks. And it gets back to the idea that Brian brought up of agency, right? Like, are we making sure we're treating everybody we interact with, everyone we serve, with respecting their agency, and if our services are helping grow that and recognizing the worth of their own spirit. I have one last question for the panelists, and I'm gonna head back over. We'll start with DeAnne, and we'll go through in the same order we did last time. And then we'll have a chance for any last questions. So what are some of the tools and resources available to help bridge the divide? And this is your chance to show off what you all have on offer in your organization, or anything that we should know and share with our communities.
Well, I definitely want to plug seniorplanet.org, and check out the COVID-19 page. The communications team and the curriculum team at OATS have been working for the last 5 months to move our programming online. It's available in Spanish and English. We've got access to our event calendar that can show you what's going on. We've got 60 plus hours of programming, Monday through Friday, that people can join virtually or over the phone. There is also a bunch of how-to and resource guides. We've got resource guides on, what are the free and affordable internet options that are out there right now for people that are over 60. There's also our great blog and editorial content from Verge and her team. So we're also writing stories about life during COVID, and we're also documenting the stories about life during COVID of our members. And there's also fun stuff. You can't just spend every day on the computer doing telehealth and online security and financial security. So we've got a lot of amazing creative expression programming going on. Everything from joining a book club to learning about what Black Lives Matters is as a movement to learning how to act as a senior. So I would definitely encourage people to visit seniorplanet.org to learn more about the work we're doing.
Thanks. Now I'm going to move it on over to Brian.
There we go. Yeah, as far as resources, COVID related, we actually have an assistance page on our website, on the City of San Antonio COVID's website, and internet assistance, whether it's devices or understanding which ISPs are offering subsidies, how to access those subsidies, that information is there. And it's underneath utilities, because internet access is definitely a utility now. So folks can go there for information and guidance on any kind of assistance that we can offer. And then our 311. So if you call 311, the wonderful folks over there will gladly provide information and guidance for support services as well. And then there's always our public library. Our friends over there at the public library have always offered great support when it comes to access to the internet and how to access the internet and what to do once you're there. And that hasn't stopped. So call them up, reach out to them. Once they start opening back up, that'll be a great resource. Yeah, and again, any of our collaborative partners, whether it be United Way, Goodwill, et cetera, they're doing that strong work as well from their end. So yeah.
Brian, as a city agency, I know there's the task force, but are any of the other city commissions or boards ones that advise your department or feedback for your department?
Yes. So yes, the Digital Inclusion Task Force, we spun it up after COVID. We've had planned to spin it up regardless, but it's our Innovation and Technology Council Committee. So there's 4 council people that serve on there and then 3 community members. And as I mentioned, DeAnne's one of those folks that serves on there. That is a public meeting that's held typically on a monthly basis. July we had summer break, so they didn't have it then. But that's our governance within the City of San Antonio organization.
And is that a committee that is available to apply for through the city clerk's office?
Correct. Yes, it is.
Okay. And tell me the name of it one more time.
The Innovation and Technology Council Committee, or ITC.
Okay.
And the task force that we have right now, the Digital Inclusion Task Force, we're looking to kind of, I don't want to say formalize, because that just doesn't make anything fun anymore. But we're looking to formalize that a little bit more in order to bring in more folks and create some efficiency with the decisions that are made there and how we move forward with that group. So looking forward to that.
Okay, thank you, Brian. And next, Karen, if you'd be so kind as to fill us in terms of what are some of the tools and resources that you know that are available to help bridge that divide?
All right. For us, it's really the opportunity to go to bear.org. So I think Going to bear.org and looking up the Military and Veteran Service Center. On our webpage, you will find a list of services, of resources. The biggest question is always, you know, what am I entitled to? What benefits am I entitled to? So what we've done is we've linked ourselves to a lot of our partners, such as the VA, such as Texas Veterans Commission. We put together a list of frequently asked questions. A lot of vets don't know where to start, how to get their DD-214, which is actually the form that you are given after you get out of the service. You have to have that to prove that you're a veteran. That is step one. That is step one for anything you do with the VA. So we try to list out a whole bunch of FAQs so that people know, hey, I can go here and I can start the process. My team is also on Facebook and LinkedIn under their Military and Veteran Service Center. And in order to do that, we're trying to do live chats so that we can talk about benefits and how they would go about, you know, actually going through their benefits. What are some obstacles that people must overcome when they're trying to get their benefits done? So we have some recordings on there. We were doing kind of a bear chat there. That was our answer to COVID. We were going live. We were doing a noon chat for everybody so that we could talk through that. We also do a lot of placements. I do employment, transition. I deal with the workforce. So that's the other side of my house. We're very successful in placing veterans into jobs. So we have great relationships with businesses and businesses that hire veterans. So we do that on a day-to-day basis. So we want to reach out and make sure that veterans understand that if they are looking for employment, we're like the first stop they should come to, because we will train them on how to become a civilian. And I think that that's extremely important, because my first year in the city of San Antonio, nobody would talk to myself or my boss. We were both fresh out of the military. And I say that because nobody understood any word that we said. So it's daunting, and people hardly understand him today. So my former boss, who's the director of the military affairs for the city of San Antonio as a former Marine. But we go through a process of trying to make sure that we take all the acronyms out of your, you know, vocabulary, and we teach you. We're doing Zoom classes on a daily basis. We want to make sure that we're reaching out to vets. And usually people are trying to get into our Zoom classes and our benefits compensation classes too, and our pension classes. So we're providing everything we would have provided if we were fully on board. So we have a listing of everything written out, and we're hoping to reach veterans through that. So it's veterans at all levels. And I will tell you that we will always be outside for those veterans that don't have the capability or the technology or how to use it. And we'll be there to be able to answer their questions as well.
Thank you so much. And I want to open up this question to Jackie and Michael. If you wanted to share any resources or tools that are available to help bridge the digital divide.
Sure. So here at the Lighthouse, we have a number of services that we're able to provide to blind, vision impaired. In my area, of course, it's going to be technology related. And so much of our efforts have been put into online training. So that is something that we're able to offer. And that's done remotely through certain assistive software. If we have individuals who are using things like screen magnification, screen reader, we're able to provide training in those applications and then using them with mainstream applications. So that's our big effort online right now, is being able to provide those type of services. We're starting to dabble in trying to do training through with the use of smartphones. It's a bit problematic, only because that's the type of training that it's more doable when it's face-to-face, but we're trying to come up with ways that we can offer that remotely, since that is such a big need right now. So that's one thing that we offer. And then we, of course, also offer job placement services. We have our senior center program, and that has a number of different services as well. All these services are listed on our main website at salighthouse.org. I also host a podcast where I talk about different types of assistive technology and other things that are useful for those who are blind, vision impaired. And that's something I do every month. And that's also can be found on the main website as well. We also have a Facebook group where people can participate. And there it's a focus on education, technology, and career.
And would we be able to find that Facebook group just by searching Facebook for
San Antonio Lighthouse, San Antonio Lighthouse, education, technology, and career.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Michael.
Sure.
Yeah, so for Humana Bold Goal, we are a little bit of a unique situation, and we don't offer, because we're a collective impact approach, we don't really offer any resources or services or programming. I think our primary focus is really thought leadership, and we look at how we can collaborate and kind of create innovative projects with different community partners. So it's a lot about hosting conversations and bringing the right folks to the table to kind of see what kind of solutions we can create together. That being said, we do have on our populationhealth.humana.com website, there is a list of just general education resources, some information about, what Bold Goal has done since we started in 2015. There's several initiatives that have come out of the Bold Goal work in San Antonio, several great, fantastic partnerships, like our partnership with OATS and Senior Planet. So I think we're working on some really cool projects, and I'm really more of a connection point as opposed to offering resources. But I'm willing to have these conversations all day, because if we keep at it, we will eventually find those right solutions that we need for our community.
Thanks, Jackie, and thank you for sharing a bit about Humana Bold Goal and what you do with and for the community. With that, I have wrapped up the panelists' question session of this, and I want to turn things over to Melanie Cawthon of DisABILITYsa to close it out for us.
Thank you so much for moderating for us today. I appreciate all of the panelists and all of the exhibitors who came and joined us tonight. For DisABILITYsa, what we're doing is just connecting. So our main model is to connect people with resources, to connect providers with each other, to connect people to conversation. We believe if we continue to talk about things and bring multiple players to the table, that we can make our city a better place. And our vision at DisABILITYsa is to make San Antonio the #1 community where people with disabilities want to live, work, and play. And we can't do that without all people being at the table, both people living with disabilities and those who are not, as well as those who care for people with disabilities, serve people with disabilities, and all of the employers and just the city departments. And so thank you for coming together to talk about this issue and how it impacts people with disabilities in our community. And Brian, thank you. Like I said, we connect, right? So when people want to make a difference in an area, we always refer them to the city clerk's office to sign up for the committees and commissions, because that is one place where we see a huge lack of participation by people living with a disability. And that is the table where our leadership gets their advice from. So always want to encourage people to, this is the topic, the digital divide. Here's the city department that's working on that. And your opportunity to have a voice is to apply for those positions on those those city committees, commissions, and boards. So thank you all for bringing your information, your expertise, and your opportunities and resources to the table this evening. And on that note, I think we're going to call it an evening. This recording will be put out on our social media and our website. We have a Conversation 360 website, not whole site, a web page. And so this will be available